steel beams, turbine motors, copper wiring, and scrap metal. The Lenox Metals Recycling Show is for the serious big players. If you're working in a demolition, renovation, construction, in the hotel industry, government agency, or a utilities company, or just need to know what to do with your scrap and junk, then tune in. Al Hornstein, CEO of Lenox Metals, has over 25 years of experience as a commercial and industrial scrap metals dealer. He will bring you valuable information on how to save time, money, and your company's reputation when it comes to processing your recyclable scrap materials. Now, here's your host, Alan Hornstein, and his co-host, Justine Gronwald.
Welcome back to another episode of Lenox Metals Recycling Show. I'm the co-host, Justine Gronwald, with your host, CEO of Lenox Metals, Alan Hornstein.
Hi, Justine. Nice
Hi.
to be back.
Yes, and today we're going to cover a topic that I think everybody should be aware of, and that is, what do you have right under your nose that could be a problematic item or equipment? And what we mean by problematic is that it could be dangerous, bad for the environment, or all of those above.
Sure.
So before we got rolling here, you and I discussed, some of the items we have no idea could be bad for the environment or the person themselves. We went through a list, so why don't you tell us some of those items? Because some of them I am like, what?
Sure.
You wouldn't even think.
Yeah. Well, in the realm of our business, when we set containers of all different sizes out at in the private and public sectors, where we don't always know what's coming back, and so we don't see it sometimes until a container is dumped, of metal, steel, and many times there are what we list as undesirable material. We have a list of them that a list of these undesirable items that really shouldn't be thrown into a container that is destined for recycling. But should they mistakenly be thrown into a container, we know how to handle those items. There's probably as many as 40 or 50 different items that could be household related, that are commercially related. It can start with products that are oil contained or that have some form of oil in it.
Yeah, you mentioned oil filters, obviously.
Oil filters, in the automotive side, we even get transmissions. Transmissions have, if you know anything about transmissions, they're run with oil pans underneath for lubrication. We get sometimes in our automotive containers, sometimes we get pans full of oil. Well, we need to know how to drain those oils and handle the oil properly as well. Not that it's hazardous, but it's still oil, an oil-related type substances that we need to keep clean. It can relate to paint cans with paint. It can relate to aerosol cans that are...
They're explosive, aren't they?
Not explosive, but they are typically under pressure. And so if one were to be punctured, if there was a full aerosol can, that would be something that would be emitted into the air. So if you're around it or near it, it's obviously not a healthy thing. We get glass-related products, that are, attached to things like window frames. Well, broken glass causes acylic dust once it's crushed. Acylic dust. Most glass products are made with acylic in it. It could be a lamp. It could be a window. It could be anything. It could be a bottle. That's where a lot of, let's say, household recyclables that have bottles that are recycled have acylic dust if it's crushed or broken. anything that is in recyclable electronics. Acrylic dust comes from screens or broken screens of the computer itself.
And acrylic dust is not good if inhaled. Is
Correct.
that what you're saying? It's very
Correct.
dangerous for the lungs.
It's dangerous to inhale it directly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's because of the properties that make up acrylic dust that are in the glass itself that are problematic, if you were to ingest it directly. There is a complete list of what we call undesirable products that we sort of flag the generator on and say, please follow our rules. Please do not throw these into the containers. But if they are, we then have to pull them out, extract them, package them, possibly even charge back the generator for the disposal.
I was going to ask that. It sounds like it would take extra time, extra work, and expenses to properly dispose of them.
Yes.
And if you pass it on to the generator, so it would behoove the generator to take a little bit of extra time to look through their waste material prior to having you haul it out.
Exactly. Now, sometimes they don't always have the time on their side to do that at a project site.
But you make them aware
We
that
understand that.
if you find them, though.
Yes. There's enough attention paid to it in advance of a project,
Okay.
so we can enlighten the generator more as to that possibility.
And you mentioned in the lamps, because I asked you, okay, lamps, Alan, why? And you said the ballast has mercury in it.
Well, the ballasts are the actual, the older ballasts that come out of ceiling configurations that are hidden away that no one sees, are the actual starting mechanism. So when a light switch is flipped on, that signal goes to the ballast, which is the starter. That starter lights up the lamp, which is adjoined next to the lamp. Or I should say the ballast is next to the lamp. The old manufactured equipment will sometimes have a capacitor inside, which is PCB contained, small amounts of polychlorinated biphenyls.
We're getting science here.
Yeah, small amounts, but really enough that are detectable, and so they need to be recycled correctly. The lamps that they start, that are triggered by the starting mechanism, the old type lamps that are non-energy efficient products, will contain small amounts of mercury.
Yeah, that's what you mentioned.
And many times people will end up, because they think of it as a trash item, they'll break the lamp, but disperse mercury-related properties that come out of the lamp. So lamps also, as a lighting product, are recycled separately.
And mercury is known to be carcinogenic. It causes cancer.
It is. Enough of it that is concentrated. You won't get it in one lamp. You might get it in 1,000 lamps, though.
Right, but when you do these huge renovations, that's a whole amount of...
Yeah, and most of the contractors, whether they're demo contractors or they're primary contractors, understand that those waste materials need to be handled separately and disposed of separately. And if they're not quite educated as to the disposal side, we'll take a contractor through that and tell them how to dispose of those byproducts so that they're disposed of correctly, not harmful to the environment.
Yeah, we just wanted to do this episode because ahead of time, if you're listening to this and maybe in the future are able to work with Lenox Metals on a project, at least you are aware of these things ahead of time. To be
Correct.
mindful about those things.
Absolutely.
And are there any other huge items that you would say be aware of right off the bat? I know there's a list of 40, but there must be some huge ones that anybody should know about that they wouldn't even suspect.
Well, there, for instance, in a lot of the demolitions that go on, whether it's, let's say, a military reservation, most of the products that are recycled, let's say off a ocean-going ship, have lead paint on them. Lead is, again, a worrisome material if concentrated, in large amounts. So typically there is a test to do lead testing to see if it falls below the limits of handling scrap material as a recycled product. Because if it falls above the handling practices, then the paint has to be contained on the product and either sandblasted off, pulled back into a bag.
Wow.
It
What a
depends on the
job.
product. Yeah.
What a job.
Yeah.
Do you find that in, you mentioned that you do work in Pearl Harbor with the old ships. Do you see a
Yes.
lot of that happening?
We see a lot of it happening. There's a lot of sandblasting that goes on inside Pearl Harbor itself, but they have some very, very strict guidelines for containing lead, containing paint. When they're treating a surface or a subsurface of an ocean-going ship, they're very, very strict on their containment methods.
That's
So whatever
good.
process they use, they follow strict guidelines for containment, bagging, disposal. Yeah, and they do a good job of it in the military as well.
Oh, that's good. I just wanted to have this episode for people to understand that, especially those who've never been through this process before of a large demolition and they're just starting out, at least they'll be more aware of it.
Sure.
And that when they finally meet with you, at least they're a little bit more educated and understand that you're going to bring this up.
Yes.
And perhaps they've already previewed what they have on hand to let you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We find, just going back to lead for a minute, because we're handling power-related products, we see a lot of lead and power-related lead itself inside cable or outside of cable. Again, another special handling process.
Right.
So when we send off material that will be recycled for its copper content, but it has a shield of lead around it, we will typically need to get a test of the contents of that product to know that is a non-hazardous substance and that lying below the levels of treatment that would be required if it tested otherwise. But it's a function of educating. I mean,
Right.
on inside our facility, we have training methods for that. Our own guys are tested yearly for
wow.
lead levels
Huh.
that they might come into contact with. Because
Right.
it's just the nature of our business.
Exposure.
Yeah, the exposure levels are not typically high, but they are personally fitted for NIOSH-approved air-assisted masks that they can use anytime during their day, if they prefer to use that. Otherwise, we provide them lead dusk mats. Mostly all the guys use those
That's
during
good.
their day.
That's good.
Yeah, but each is personally fitted with their own mask as well.
That
And
makes
then-
sense.
And then the mask program is also checked by regulators and consultants that are brought in to do our training, whether it's externally or internally.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yes.
Well, that's good to know that every measure is taken for safety all the way around, especially with these hazardous materials.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is. It's just the nature of our business. We are the vehicles of moving metal. We are the recycler. And as such, being in that industry, we have to be aware of all the byproducts, the products that directly people see directly or indirectly in their day of employment in our company and outside of it.
Okay, great. I'm glad. This episode is all about awareness, and you can get more information from Alan at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a number, area code 808-518-3997. Just call or text your email to this number, and you will get a report from Alan covering some of the topics that we've been, bringing to your awareness in the podcast. So we thank you for joining us today at this episode. And again, I'm the co-host, Justine Gronwald, and your host, CEO of Lenox Metals, Alan Hornstein.
Thank you, Justine. Nice being here.
All right, so we'll see you later.
Aloha.